And Mozambique is so much different than the United States that it's literally like an entirely different world. As far as the people go, the Mozambican people are just extremely special. Like I love them a lot. You know, obviously every person is different, but I guess speaking as a whole, they're very happy people. They're very friendly, very nice, kind people. They're very humble and very hardworking. One of the things that I like a lot about the Mozambican culture, as opposed to maybe the American culture, is they had less of a focus on the materialistic things of life. To them, the biggest thing wasn't making the most money or, you know, getting a nice car or getting a car, period. But they focus a lot more on, I'd say, the things that are valuable. I mean, I just remember flying from Johannesburg to Maputo, the capital of Mozambique. As we were flying overhead, you know, the plane started descending a little bit, and so I remember just looking out the window and looking down, and just seeing just sand everywhere, and just, you know, the tin roof of all the houses, and my jaw just dropped. And the only thing I can think of that was really strange that I ate, sometimes they cook with chicken feet. I had that once. So it was kind of like I guess almost a chili that they put on top of the rice, and there's just chicken feet in there. It wasn't bad either. Like the flavor was fine. It was just a little bit chewy. We bought on the street hammerhead shark. That one was really good. Stingray. That was kind of gross, but yeah, you probably won't see a whole lot of wild animals in Mozambique. Supposedly back in the day, it was one of the best places for wild animals. You know, elephants, giraffe, zebra, whatever. But I think leading up into the early 90s, if I'm not mistaken, I think it ended in 92, the Civil War. They gained their independence in 1975, and then shortly after that, they had a very long, over 10 years, I can't remember exactly how many years, but over 10 years, they had a very long, bloody civil war. And during this time, they actually killed off all of the animals, or not all of them, but a lot of the animals to feed the troops. And then, of course, poaching. There's, you know, lots of poaching. You see monkeys. We saw crocodiles. Went to a place and saw crocodiles. Buffalo. I didn't see any zebras or giraffes. Didn't see any elephants or lions. Any house you live in, I can almost guarantee you there'll be geckos that live there and just scamper around on the ceiling. Chameleons. You know, they're harmless, but the Mozambicans, almost all of them, are scared to death of chameleons. Like they think that they're poisonous and that their spit will kill you, and that maybe I think a lot of them think that they have like magical powers and stuff. But they're harmless, and you know, they're really cool actually. So cockroaches, I guess, if that counts. Almost all of Mozambican meals, I'd say probably 95% of Mozambican meals, consist of rice or something called shima. So shima is just it's like ground up corn flour, and they boil it with water until it gets really hard, really firm, and you can grab it with your hands. But they don't eat that alone. They always have something with it. So that can be fried fish. Sometimes they fry up small fish like that big, or they have lots of like greens. So they have something called matapa, which is mandioca, or manioc, I guess in English, manioc leaves. And they mash that up and they cook it with coconut milk. A lot of the dishes have coconut milk in it. Also pumpkin leaves, they did the same thing with that. Something else called couve, which I'm not sure what it is in English. I've heard it's collard greens that's cut up and then mashed. So generally speaking, that's called a caril. And they put that on top of the rice or shima. The way they typically prepare it is they have something called a pilão. It's like a hollowed out tree trunk, kind of. So just like I guess like a big mortar and pestle. And so they put the food in there, and then they mash it up with a great big stick. Then they cook it. They boil it for a long time. It's good. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's got coconut milk in it, so it's got a pretty mild flavor. It's really tasty. If you go to a restaurant, they'll almost always have chicken. So they have like fried chicken and usually rice, maybe potatoes on the side with a salad. It's pretty simple, but it's really good. The food's great. They also have a lot of food that you can buy on the street, kind of like snacks and stuff. One of the common foods is something called shamusa. So it's just a little triangle that has like just this really thin fried bread or fried crust, I guess, with potatoes on the inside, or sometimes they have fish on the inside. And then they have bolinhos, which are just like little fried, like kind of like donut holes, except for not as sweet. I mean, lots. Like I could go on. There's lots of stuff you can buy on the street. So most people speak their traditional African language. They call them dialects. And then they also speak Portuguese, which they learn in school. So almost everybody usually is bilingual. In the more rural areas, you'll even find people that don't even speak Portuguese. I mean, there's lots of linguistic variety in Mozambique. Mozambique as a whole is tropical. I mean, I think they call it tropical savanna. It kind of depends on the area of where you're at. Some places have mountains. It's kind of jungly, but not like rainforest jungle. It's kind of just like African jungle, I guess. Down south, it's a little bit more like a desert. In Maputo, a little bit more like a desert. As far as describing what it's like and what the people live like, it varies a lot from the rural areas to the city. It varies greatly. In the rural areas, it's very traditional lifestyle. The poor people build their houses out of mud, which I guess is kind of cool. That's I think what people think of when they think of Africa. But there's lots of houses that are made out of mud. Just with sticks, and then they make a kind of a framework, and then plaster it with mud. And on the top, a lot of the houses have what they call chapa, which is just like kind of a thin metal, or maybe palm thatch in some areas. I think grass even in some areas. The little bit nicer houses are made out of homemade cinder blocks. The really nice houses are made out of nicer blocks, but still cement. I'd say most Mozambicans have their own farms, or what they call them is mashambas. So these mashambas, they're not really farms. I say farm, they're not really farms though, but they're not really gardens. They're like in between kind of. So it's like I guess a really big garden, and they they just have like I guess kind of a stereotypical hoe, and they bring it around and use that to do their gardening or farming, I guess. They grow corn maybe, or rice, or mandioca, or just like other fruits. There's lots of mangoes there, pineapples, coconuts, and then a lot of other fruits that you've probably never even heard of. It's kind of different when you walk on the street in America. You might pass a few people, but generally everybody goes in cars, so you don't really pass people, and people there in their house generally if they're at home. In Mozambique, it's different. You have it's a completely different feeling there because you're literally amongst the people. Like as you pass them, people they prefer to be outside of their house instead of inside of their house because it's so small. So you see people in the yard, you greet them, they greet you back. You greet the people as they're passing on the street. They're very friendly, so you really feel like you're like amongst them. Something you'll want to get used to is getting called white or mzungu. So I guess depending on the area, they have different words for it depending on what the local language is in that area. But down south they'll call you mulungu. Further north they call you mzungu or muzugu. Further up north in Kilimani, where I served. I can't remember what it is in Nampula. In any case, I can't remember the word for white there. But everywhere you go, every day you'll get called white. Everybody will yell it out to you. Mzungu. They say it's not racist, so I guess you just have to take their word for it. And it's also mostly little kids that call you that. If you just accept that people are going to call you white and yell that out to you, then you'll be a lot better off. Like if you try to fight it, and if you think, they're calling me racist names, then it'll make it hard for you. So just accept that you're going to get called white, accept that you're different, and just deal with it. Don't call them names back or anything. In one area I served in Kilimani, which was probably one of my favorite areas, they had something called bike taxis, which is just a bunch of people riding around on bikes all throughout the city, just independently, And on the back of the bike, on the bike rack, they have a padded seat with down underneath they have metal pegs welded onto the bike. So you just go out to the street and kind of flag down two bike taxis, one for yourself, one for your companion. Hop up just behind the guy. He's sitting right here, and you're sitting behind him on this bike rack. Tell him where you're going. He'll take you there. You pay him afterwards. Really unique. Really, really fun. Actually, I really enjoyed riding on bike taxis because it's a really peaceful city. The city that has them, Kilimani. So it's really laid back, and most of the clothes that they wear actually is donated from first world countries like America, except for the women. The women may wear that for their shirts, but they don't wear pants traditionally. The women, maybe some of the more modern women do in the city, but for the most part, almost everybody in Mozambique wears something called Akapalana. The women, basically, that's just a great big brightly colored cloth, usually with some cool African design, and they wrap it around their waist, kind of tuck it in like you would with a towel, I guess. And so it's just like kind of like a long skirt,